All right. Good morning, everybody. We can start. It's 10:30, right on the nose. Welcome all. I am delighted to be here. I wish we were in person in the sanctuary. Hopefully we will be soon. But welcome to my home as it is. And it's great to see you in any incarnation, virtually or in person. So thank you. I'd like to start the worship this morning by telling you about something I saw online very quickly the other day. I saw some protests. Some people are protesting critical race theory, teaching of critical race theory. And these people were white people holding up signs. And the signs read, judge character, not skin color. And there was another one that instead of critical race theory, the acronym was replaced with creating racial tension. And it was so infuriating. My immediate thought was, where were these people during the past centuries of white people judging skin color? How could these people pretend to be self-righteous, act self-righteous while completely ignoring what they didn't want to cop to when they were accused of something? Why is it that when the character of certain white people is challenged, then they shout foul, but those same people remain silent about not only defaming the character of Black people, but dehumanizing, enslaving, and killing Black people? So it just was infuriatingly hypocritical, telling the truth about racial justice in this country through critical race theory through the 1619 Project. If you haven't heard of it, look it up, or any other honest means. That truth-telling is not the cause of the tension, as the sign said. It's the racial injustice and hatred itself that is the culprit. So this morning, last week we celebrated the anniversary of the birth of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but the work of liberative justice is not a once-a-year endeavor. It continues. So this morning, let us worship together, calling up the sacred and the spiritual in the question, how might Americans claim culpability as beneficiaries, and intentionally or not, as propagators of a racist society in order to be truly, actively, and effectively anti-racist? And with that, let us worship together.
So if you all at home have a chalice, it is time to gather it now so that we can read the chalice lighting words together. And this chalice lighting is by Deborah Falk. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all this within each of us. And now for our covenant in both English and Spanish. And feel free to say these words with me. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto.
sing of hope and joy today. Some know only anguish and despair. How can we lift our voices in this way, while some have pain and misery to spare? If our crumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. Peals from a noisy gong will never do. In every breath compassion must belong. Let this song our greatest hope contain, laughter of a well-fed child its tune, roofs over every heartbeat its refrain, its harmony from peaceful cities hewn. Sing of joy while hammering each nail, sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail. May every alleluia bear a seed.
Good morning and welcome everyone to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Melissa Marotte and I'm honored to serve as your worship associate this morning. Our church, named after the Unitarian minister and philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, has become a beacon of hope, I hope, to this West Valley for over 65 years. I want to begin by acknowledging that our church is built on land stolen from those who have called it home for thousands of years. The nearby villages of Tatanga and Atasanga were a crossroads of cultures and language for the Tangva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples. This land remains part of their enduring identity and heritage. We recognize that these tribes are still here, and we are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. So welcome everyone to this online service, at least for this month. We hope to be back in person in February, but that remains to be seen, so we will keep you posted. Unitarian Universalists have many guiding principles. Our work for a better world calls us to harness love's power to stop oppression. As Unitarian Universalists, we put our faith into action. We model these commitments by creating welcoming and inclusive congregations. We act in partnership with groups and communities most impacted by injustice. We stand on the side of love to work on ending oppression. It is who we are, what we believe, and what we do. We do hope that you find a community of like-minded folks here in this spiritual sanctuary. If this is your first or second time visiting Emerson, then I extend to you a very special welcome and invite for you to learn about our guiding principles. I encourage you to get involved in things we offer here at Emerson, like choir, small group ministries, book clubs, and hiking clubs. Now, a lot of those are online right now. Of course, the hiking club is on hold for now, but hopefully that will be happening very soon. If you look in our chat, you can sign our online guest book to hear more about the upcoming events when things go back to normal, so to speak. And be sure to also stay after for our coffee hour breakout rooms. It gives everyone a chance to connect a little bit more deeply after the service. Our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than we could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. For those of you who have the Give Plus app, you can access that, or you could go to donate.emersonuuc.org, or you can mail an old-fashioned check out to Emerson UU Church or EUUC. May we give in love and in hope. Thank you so much for your donation today.
Thank you very much, Melissa. We're one of the reasons I love being in this community, in beloved community with other compassionate people who love and validate each other, is because it's a safe place to share those things that we are celebrating and those things which we are grieving and mourning and sad about. Now is a time that we do that sharing. And if you don't feel in an emotional place to share, that's fine too. We will hold space and silence for you. If you do feel like sharing, we have the virtual Book of Life that was in the chat. There's already a couple of shares in there and I'll read them. And also you can put it in the chat directly. Right now, I'd like to wish all the best to Linda Prager for a quick and easy upcoming procedure, and a very quick and very easy full recovery. We send you our love. Brian Nelson in the Virtual Book of Life says, this week we are celebrating the memory of my beloved mother, Kathleen Nelson, who died on January 20th after a long illness. He says, thank you to all those in our Emerson family who have reached out to us at, and I can't see the rest of that. Here at this time, we encourage donations in my mother's memory to the Alzheimer's Association. So we keep Kathleen Nelson in our hearts, and I will make a donation to the Alzheimer's Association myself in her honor. Pierre Brogan, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, wants to offer joy that their friend Brian is getting the treatment that he needs. And Alice is offering up a sorrow for the loss of the beloved Buddhist teacher and peace activist, yes, Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away in his 90s. Joy that so many thousands of people who have been touched by his teachings and who stand for peace, justice, and compassion and mindfulness will be his continuation. Thank you for that, Alice. Let me see if there's any in the chat. Oh, thank you. And while we hold those joys and condolences and joys and concerns in our hearts, I'd like to center us for a moment. I'm gonna reach into the Book of Psalms right now, chapter 46, verse 10. There is a sentence that says, "Be still, and know that I am God." I know in Unitarian Universalist congregations, not everyone uses that term God. Not everyone believes in the divine in the same way. I myself am a humanist, so I uplift the divine human energy that we all share, that life-giving energy. So when we say be still and know that I am, feel free to fill in that last word with whatever phrase is meaningful for you, whatever word is meaningful for you, whatever makes meaning for you or is sacred for you within your belief system in your sacred language or your secular language. Or just don't say anything at all. Before we start, I'm also going to read There's a Joy for my friend Rosalina, who is recovering from successful ovarian cancer treatment. And that's also from Pierre Brogan. Anne Wagner, Joy for my sister's health and recovery. Lloyd, Doris Dent says, is facing a difficult health choice. So as we center ourselves now, please hold all of these people in your hearts. What we're going to do is I'm going to say, be still and know that I am, fill in the blank. And then we're going to go backwards from there, sort of like that children's song, bingo, B-I-N-G-O. And I'm going to remove one word each time until we are just being together. So if you will, sit comfortably, be in your space comfortably, and we will begin. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and be still. Be. Our meditative hymn today is number 391, Voice Still and Small.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years singing.
It's such a nice song to hear Kevin sing. Now we have a reading, and what we would really like you all to do is to read with me. You're all muted, but the words will be up on the screen. This is Affirmations of Hope by Loretta Williams. Hopefully the words will appear soon.
Trying to post them in the chat, and that doesn't seem to be working.
Oh,
But there could be a slide.
okay.
Otherwise, let's see. Huh. That's very interesting. You can start reading them if you want, and If the slide comes up, the slide comes up. If not, we'll just listen in.
Okay. Affirmations of Hope by Loretta Williams. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead. Yet we know that in the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns. We stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm peoplehood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the image of whatever the divine means to us, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathered community, we will discover the strength not to hide in indifference, affirming that hope, publicly expressed, energizes and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. That which touches me most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale. The older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing a light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching survives. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. Sometimes I can be quite difficult. I'll bow to no man's word. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Wow, we really have some great singers in this congregation. So thank you all. Thank you all who are participating in this service. For those of you, I see some of you are on the phone, or for those of you who are vision impaired, I am a white man with brown hair and a brown beard, large glasses with black rims on top, a purple polka dot bow tie on top of a loud pattern shirt. So my family and I, we were at dinner last year, and this discussion began about racism. And one of my daughters turned to me, I was a little shocked, they were preteens, and one of my daughters turned to me and said, "But Dad, you're not racist, are you?" No, obviously at the time I was caught off guard, as many white people are when asked this question. You see, accepting, let alone saying the words, "I am racist," is understandably incredibly difficult for most white people. And it's more often misinterpreted as a condemnation of character, rather than what it actually is, which is just a descriptive word. You see, it may be difficult to say, but that doesn't make it any less true or any less necessary to claim. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that is. I'm going to tell you why I know I am racist, and why stating that publicly is essential, and why understanding that it is important to recognize that although that is what I am, it is not the entirety of who I am. So let's start with what I also am. I was raised with the Jewish values of tikkun olam and bar mitzvah. Tikkun olam, for you, those of you who don't know, means repairing the world. Today, I identify as a culturally Jewish Unitarian Universalist and a humanist. And living those values, living my UU, my humanist, my Jewish values, means that I cannot overlook vital human issues such as interlocking oppression of people of color and education, healthcare, housing, criminal justice. I can't ignore racism. And indeed, I must, given my values, work constantly to be anti-racist. So all that being true, you get it. This congregation gets it. Doesn't necessarily answer the question of why I have to publicly claim my own racism. So now I'm going to use a simile to help explain, recognizing that no metaphor is ever perfect by any means. So racism is to society as cancer is to the human body. You see, cancerous cells cluster in certain places, be it a tumor in a single organ or swimming in the bloodstream. And the organ that's inflicted with the tumor suffers those health consequences overcome by those cancerous cells. However, other parts of the anatomy may be left seemingly untarnished by the disease. You see, a lung might be overwhelmed by cancer, having trouble breathing, but in the same body, a foot or an eye or something, it doesn't feel any effect from that same cancer. And in that same way, racism focuses its deleterious effects on certain parts of the social body, societal anatomy, while others remain unscathed and even thrive. They're still damaged most often, but symptomless. In fact, without regular checks of all areas of our body and bodies, many cancers, as you know, go undetected. However, regardless of where that cancer is, or whether the person experiences symptoms at all or not, or chooses to get checked, regardless of any of that, that entire person, holistically, that entire body is a cancer sufferer. They have cancer. Robin DiAngelo argues that, she says, radical relationality is fundamental to ending racism. And radical relationality is liberatory action informed by the recognition that much like every part of our body relies on every other, just as one part of a body does not exist independently of the others, all living things do not exist independently. It's right there in our principles, the interdependent web of existence. The cancer is killing the entirety of the person, even if they have no idea because they're not looking or don't care to look. You might ask, so why wouldn't someone be looking? Why wouldn't they be checking for cancer? Well, one reason is that if they did, they'd have to confront it, and confront along with a great struggle for survival. To accept cancer and consent to its treatment is to accept suffering. It takes a strong and courageous person to do that. But we must ask ourselves, if we know we have cancer, and we know we have the cancer of racism, and suffering through treatment, through a chemotherapy or a radiation treatment would likely cure it, would we go through the agony of that treatment to save our life? I would. The treatment of the cancer of racism will be painful for our entire society. Black, Indigenous, and people of color, obviously, who are directly impacted, as well as those not currently directly impacted, will all feel pain, will all suffer. And further, the pain I feel as a white person will never compare to that of those already in so much pain for generations. And knowing that the treatment is the only way to have any hope of curing their pain that they've suffered for so long, I welcome my own with gladness, with hope, even relief, as more than even my patriotic duty, which it is, as my human duty. So what about causality, culpability? Let's go back to the analogy. Smoking is responsible for lung cancer often. And smokers, while they get pleasure in their mouths, I've smoked before, so pleasurable. While they get that pleasure, they're ignoring the suffering in their lungs. They're making that choice. And what about non-smokers, like I am now, who do nothing to stop smoking? There is also a responsibility there to help society, rid society of the harmfulness of smoking. But rather than just condemn smokers, the people who are smoking, others try to help them. A smoker may be what a person is, but they can decide with their actions and choices who they continue to be. I am a racist. I'm sorry, I am racist. Let me specify, there's a difference between an internally held bigotry and an expression of racism. So I am racist in that I am a member of a racist society who perpetuates the cancer of racism, even unintentionally and even by my inaction. It is what I am, but it is not who I am as a person. As long as I am focusing on the denial of that what, no, I'm not a racist. As long as that's my focus, I'm neglecting the acceptance of who my values direct me to be, an anti-racist. So a public claim is important because back to the analogy, if a patient says, no, I don't have cancer, denies they have cancer, how can it then be treated? If I don't acknowledge that there's cancer and that my actions will either propagate or stop it, regardless of if I brought it about myself or not, regardless of if I suffer directly from it or not, I can't fight it. And if I don't go further to acknowledge my own accountability, I can't understand how I may still be perpetuating, how I am still perpetuating any harm in order to stop doing that. It's right there in the eighth principle. Our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Most of all, I claim I'm a racist because it's true. I benefit daily from racism and racist policy. It's true because, as the research of social psychologist Jennifer Eberhardt showed, we all of us have ideas about race, even the most open-minded among us. And those ideas have the power to bias our perception, our attention, our memory, and our actions, all despite our conscious awareness or deliberate intentions. So I am a healthy cell in a cancer patient, and the only way to treat it is to give up some of my own privilege to alleviate the suffering of others until no cell, no person is suffering in society. And that acceptance of healing, saying, I have cancer, let's start the treatment. Acceptance of healing can be empowering. It is empowering and it's positive. But for most white people, I validate that it is a challenging transformation. We have to see ourselves differently than how we've seen ourselves our entire lives. And the first step of which must be claiming one's own racism. Robin DiAngelo writes, I don't think there will be structural transformation without personal transformation. And in this sense, personal transformation is an act of anti-racism. One thing does not happen lest the other occurs. So I can claim that I am racist and retain a positive self-image. In fact, to accept one's racism is not to defame oneself, not to defame one's character, but rather something that represents significant personal integrity. But what makes it especially difficult for white people like me to claim their own racism, and also especially crucial, is that racial inequities in this country, as we know, have become so normalized, accepted as simply a part of how we function. Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Caste, she writes that government policies of intentional segregation, and if you want to know what those are, you should get the book. There are plenty, she lists plenty of them. These intentional government policies of intentional segregation replaced Jim Crow in a way that was tolerable, even to sympathetic liberal white people, while keeping the caste system, racism, in place. Wilkerson continues, it is the worn grooves of comforting routines and unthinking expectations, patterns of a social order that have been in place for so long that it looks like just the natural order of things. Most of those, like myself, who reap its benefits, simply don't see it. All the more reason my admission is so vital to bring it out into the open. And unfortunately, there are still many white people who have trouble accepting racism and our white supremacy culture. I validate that. And rather than right now lay it out in a single sermon, and I'm happy to give examples if you ask, and rather than subject people of color who are also here today in this congregation to yet another discussion about whether it even still exists or not, a much more efficacious solution is to think about it over time within your community of support, within your own community of identity, and most importantly, through your own individual discernment. So today's talk is also a challenge, especially to white people. If you're uncomfortable accepting your own racism or even claiming that we live in a white supremacy culture, I validate your feelings. I feel the same discomfort. And I ask that you not wait for the minister to give you examples or believe a minister who purports to know it all. We don't know it all. I admonish you to not ask a person of color to explain it to you. It's painful. Rather, I challenge you. Go out, look for examples yourself, read, listen to blogs, center voices and thoughts of people of color who have shared them publicly. Do your own investigating. The eighth principle is a great jumping off point. The work, however, should, can, and must permeate all of church life and business. The report from the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change, which I'm sure you've heard of. And if you haven't, I'm happy to share it with you. It's called Widening the Circle of Concern. It offers many great suggestions. And I believe this congregation has done much of that work. I'm new here, but from what I understand, they have. And I appreciate that, your work in liberative justice. Let's keep going. According to Dr. Ibram Kendi, and as I mentioned earlier, the word racist is simply a descriptor. It's not a slanderous term, although only a descriptor, as Robin DiAngelo writes. In large part, the terms and phrases we use shape how we perceive or make meaning in what we observe. So I challenge white people to also discuss openly words like racist and white supremacy culture. Talk about them, claim them in order to demystify and destigmatize them so that we can claim the cancer once and for all and treat it. I'm racist. It's said, it's out there. I'm a good person, regardless. I'm racist. It's said, it's out there. Let people think what they will. I'm racist and I live in a society saturated by white supremacy culture. It's said, it's out there. And in saying it, I've disabled the power the words have to divert attention from the actual problem of racism. In claiming it out loud, it's no longer about my white reaction to that word. And I can now renew focus. I can focus on the important fight to rid our society's anatomy of the cancer so that we all survive and thrive. I'm going to conclude by acknowledging that I likely stirred up quite a bit of emotion just now. So let's breathe for a moment. The reason I am a UU is also that liberative justice is not only so vital, so important to our value system, but spirituality is as well. The struggle and the sacred are the warp and the weft of our faith. What's more, as we go through painful experiences, we hold ourselves and others in love, as we did in the Joys and Concerns. We bring the spiritual element laid out in our principles to allow each other to process the pain and the struggle. Let me be clear, this does not preclude righteous anger. Nobody, especially the privileged, especially white people, has the right to dictate a reaction to hate and violence to which we cannot even pretend to relate. This does not mean we don't fight and fight hard. It means that we commit to making sure, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said this as well, commit to making sure that fight is one that is fought with compassion and love through that lens. Compassion and love, something often missing when anger and frustration overcome the work of liberative justice. We recognize the hard work of social justice as spiritual work and as a theological imperative, whatever the divine means for each of us, and a theological imperative to bolster the human anatomy, the societal anatomy, the human energy and spirit for me. What we are doing now is, after all, not a lecture or a rally. It's a worship service. So know that this community is here to hold each other. Join me in this worship today in its entirety, as we've already done and continue to do, allowing us to process throughout in different ways spiritually as we go. Let me return to the dinner table in my home. You remember that way back at the beginning, where my daughter asked me, "Daddy, but you're not racist, are you?" Well, I took to heart what Dr. Ibram Kendi wrote in the New York Times in 2018 in an article in which he argued that the heartbeat of racism is denial, and the heartbeat of anti-racism is confession. So yes, I told my daughter at that time, and still do, that I'm racist. And that accountability, that confession, was the single thing, the first thing that catalyzed one of the most honest, open, and important discussions our family has had on the actual issue of racism. And I also made her a promise that day that I will work as hard as I can, moment to moment, to be anti-racism. Racism is cancer that infects American society. I will continue to consider how, as a white person, I can commit every day of the year to the long and painful process of treating society to make it cancer-free. And I challenge all white people, rather than take offense at being called racist, what we are, renew focus on your values and concentrate on who you are as a person. Renew focus on those important values and how they define not what you are, but who you are. And our closing hymn will be number 1074, an uplifting, upbeat hymn, Turn the World Around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do you know who we are? Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life. Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life. Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life. Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life. Whoa, so is life but a war. So is life.
I love that. I love that song. I am going to close out, extinguish our chalice, reading from, I have this book, The Complete Poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar. I read it in one of our meetings earlier, and I just really like this poem, and it's perfect after that song. Paul Laurence Dunbar was one of the first published African-American poets, the son of two former slaves, one of the first published African-American poets, so you can look him up. And this poem is called Life. A crust of bread and a corner to sleep in, a minute to smile and an hour to weep in, a pint of joy to a peck of trouble, and never a laugh, but the moans come double, and that is life. A crust and a corner that love makes precious, with a smile to warm and the tears to refresh us. And joy seems sweeter when cares come after, and a moan is the finest of foils for laughter. And that, my beloved friends, is life. Thank you. Yes, while the music's playing, I would like to thank Melissa, Kevin, and Adam for participating in the service today. Apologize for not thanking you earlier.
All right, everyone, I'm going to start the breakout rooms in just a minute. If you want to join, just stay on. If not, you go ahead and log off and we'll go from there. Nice job today, Melissa and Joshua.
Thank you, thank you. And thank you.
Yeah, great job for you.
Yes, and thank you, Adam, so much. Clinton is reminding us in the chat not to come to church in person next week. We tentatively plan to be there in person / hybrid on February 6th. So keep an eye on the newsletter, but not next week.
Okay, breakout rooms starting. Let's see. We got 27 people right now, so let's do 4 breakout rooms. Away we go.
So does Matthew usually go into a breakout room or stay here?
Yeah, he usually hangs out.
Here or in a breakout room? Because I don't.
He usually joins breakout rooms.
Oh, all right. I'll join a random one, I think.
Yeah.
I'll just join a random one.
Iris, would you like me to put you in a breakout room with some others? Oh, you got it. Let's see, what else do we have? We got Phil and Virginia and Sandra. Oh, Sandra, that's your other camera, huh? Sandra, would you like me to assign you to a breakout room? You're muted, so I cannot hear you. You're just shaking your head. Yes. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and assign you. There we go.
And
Oh,
they bring us 3 meals a day. Hi, Adam.
hi. I forgot to stop the recording.